welcome back. Last time we started out around here, had some of this done, had a bit of a squirt, and ended up around here. Next up, time to tackle these absolute horrors on the exhaust ports. To call them rusty would be underselling the level of grime, rot and oxide at work here. Some of the nuts didn't even have recognisable sides anymore. On the advice of a friend, it was time to buy a nut splitter. I set to work trying to destroy the nuts and free the header pipes, but even getting the splitter into some of the tiny spots was a massive challenge. I quickly realised that I would have to employ various methods to get rid of these nuts. Eventually, after a huge amount of time and effort, one by one they gave out. A few with a splitter, a few with a mini grinder, and the remainder with a good old hammer and chisel. As the exhaust didn't seem to be secured to anything but the ports, a bit of wiggling managed to free the entire system. The bike looked even more streamlined now. It was nearly time for complete deconstruction. Now, to free the front end. I'd had some issues freeing the bottom yoke bolts, and it has to date also eluded two of my bolt whisperer friends. I was going to have to remove the front end more or less intact. Luckily, the notoriously tricky stem bolt didn't put up too much of a fight. Next, removing the rear wheel before I break down the final drive and swing arm. Oops. It was time to remove the swing arm, final drive and stock suspension. The fixed pivot mechanism came out of the left-hand side of the swing arm housing easily enough, but the right-hand side was another matter. The manual simply said, remove the fixed pivot bolt, as if it was that simple. It suggested adding a bolt to the supplied recess to help ease it out. I did this and gently prised it out with a chisel and screwdriver over about 15 minutes. The swing arm came out fairly easily, and to my surprise the final drive came apart without too much bother as well. The splines look relatively healthy in my massively inexperienced opinion. Next up, time to try and remove the frame. Most of the bolts came out without too much incident, but the right-hand side forward bolt sheared clean off under very little pressure. That looked like it was going to be a fun adventure to get out. After that, I was expecting a bit of a wrestle to get the frame off, but it lifted out effortlessly. It was all ready for the next bit of grinder action. Now, is it just me, or does my grinder wheel look like it's running in reverse? In future, I'll have to flip the guard and operate it upside down. Good old cheap tools from China.
It comes from China.
I was finally at a stage where I could pack off the bike to get the frame welded for the retro ride suspension platform. I took it to Andy at ASE, about 20 miles away. If you're thinking about doing it, beware, it's quite an involved job requiring extra strengthening and additional plate to be added. Andy did a great job, and finally, on went the suspension platform. Not exactly super sexy at this stage, but definitely a milestone. Nice tidy welds, a general frame cleanup, and the addition of trays for the Mo unit and 40 amp fuse. As there were going to be a lot of parts and panels to restore and repaint, I thought I should probably get into a bit of shot blasting. I'd read some stuff online and asked about before buying a compressor, and decided I'd convert a kitchen unit into a blast cabinet. I was new to any of it, so again, another steep learning curve. I fitted an airflow meter and water trap and set about trying to work out how it all fit together. I eventually got it working and started on the candle cover. It was working, but it was very slow. Added to this was the unwelcome complication that I had to stop and recollect all of the media every 15 minutes or so. The hose wouldn't stay in place and the cabinet leaked around the joins. I had to accept defeat and buy a proper cabinet. It arrived in a flat pack and took roughly 8 decades to assemble.
It's been 84 years.
When it was ready though, it was in a different league. I'd sealed any cracks with calc and greased the joints. The candle cover was still being stubborn, so I tried prepping it with nitramorse. This certainly helped, but it wasn't until I did the same to the swing arm that I realised that the candle cover was just very stubborn, full stop. The swing arm stripped very readily in a quarter of the time. It was progress, but still the beginning of a very long road. This period marked what I hope is the apex of the spending on the project. I've covered almost all of the tentpole purchases now. Suspension platform, seat platform, forks, custom triple tree, Mo unit, Mo lock, Motorscope Pro, custom rear sets, gas cap, belly pan, rear shock and wheels. I still have a few bits to sort, namely the tyres and exhaust system, and a seat. In addition to these purchases, I've also had the frame mods done and some powder coating sorted. This brings us rather nauseatingly to adding up the cost. Whereas before I added everything in together, I've decided to separate out what I've spent on the actual build and what I've spent on tools and sundries. I think this will give a more defined idea about what this level of customization will cost you. So firstly, the actual build cost updated. And now, the tools and sundries. I feel a bit sick. Onwards. That sheared frame bolt and the sheared throttle body bolts would need to be extracted or re-tapped before I went any further. After a lot of time and effort, my bolt whisperer was successful. Then the centre stand and gearbox were removed for a sneaky peek at the clutch, which needs replacing. Of course it does. I've had lots of help over the last few months, not least of all from these legends. I literally couldn't do it without the guidance, so thank you. In the next video, I'm hoping to do a dirty build to see where I am with a look. Then it's cleaning. Lots of cleaning. I'll see you next time.